Part 35. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 341. Xiejing curled his lips casually. In this huge imperial capital, there are many people who want me to take advantage of you. You should feel honored that I am willing to take advantage of you. Xian Yuanyao gritted his teeth. Should I kneel down to thank you? That's not necessary, Xiejin said calmly. Please prepare the bed tonight. Don't forget to come find me. Xian Yuanyao raised his eyebrows. Who goes up and who goes down? Onlookers. What's going on? Have you asked who is up and who is down? So exciting? I have the final say on my territory, Xiejin said calmly, with a pair of phoenix eyes that were full of charm. You can do whatever I tell you to do. Xian Yuanyao sneered. Do you believe that this prince makes you unable to straighten your back? Everyone was horrified. What kind of tiger wolf talk is this? Xiejin was about to speak when he heard Xian Yuanqi cough lightly. There are two young men here who don't understand the world. Do you two want to pay attention to your sense of propriety? A young man who doesn't understand the world? Xiejin turned his eyes, glanced at the flower hall casually, and said in a calm voice, Master Hua must be over 18 years old. Xian Yuan Hua looked humble. You are 17 years old. Xiejin snorted. You're at an age where you can eat meat. Xian Yuan Hua. Xian Yuanqi narrowed his eyes. Is this Mr. Chen from Prince Wei's residence? Xiejin turned his eyes slightly and looked at the young man who had been standing quietly aside. You should be over 18 years old. Xian Yuanchen smiled warmly. Thank you very much, Lord Zhu, for your concern. Ah Chen has just turned 17 this year. Oh, that's not a young man who doesn't understand the world. Xiejin spoke calmly, his eyes falling on his pale face, with amusement and thoughtfulness in his eyes. But why is your face so ugly? I'm so scared. Arrive. No, Xian Yuanchen smiled lightly. Aiken has been feeling cold for the past 2 days and feels a little unwell. Since I occasionally feel the cold, I should wear more clothes. Why do I look so weak? Xiejin snapped his fingers as he spoke, and immediately a servant of the Xie family came over and handed Xian Yuanchen the fox fur cloak he had brought with him to protect his master from the cold. Xian Yuanchen was slightly surprised, and calmly took a step back, bowed and said, Thank you very much, Mr. Zhu, for your kindness. A Chen doesn't need it. Xiejin took the cloak and put it on his shoulders nonchalantly. The action seemed casual but was too strong to refuse. Put it on, I have never worn this new cloak. Xian Yuanchen was speechless for a moment. It's not that he dislikes anything old or new. What does Mr. Xieju, the Xie family's jeweler, wear that isn't top-notch and expensive? He just wasn't used to being cared for so much. However, the cloak was already on him. If he continued to refuse and took off the cloak and returned it to the other party, it would be unreasonable. Xian Yuanchen narrowed his eyes and smiled lightly. Thank you, Master Zhu. Tisk Xian Yuanyao's tone was sour. Ajin cares about him so much, isn't he afraid of my taste? In less than half a day, the title has changed from Xieju to Ajin. Who else is more familiar than him? Xiejin said calmly, I can give you double pampering tonight. Xian Yuanqi raised his head and looked at the sky. We are all serious gentlemen and we cannot listen to such flirting. Let's go to the East Palace first. Xian Yuanyu, Xian Yuanchen, and Xian Yuanhua all followed. Chu Xuanyi's eyes fell on Chu Nanyi. Are you going back now? Chu Nanyi said calmly, I. Nanyi, come with me to the East Palace. Xiejin put his hand around Chu Nanyi's neck. I have something to tell you later. Chu Nanyi glanced at Xian Yuanyao calmly. What should I do if the little prince tastes it? It doesn't matter, Xian Yuanyao said calmly, just compensate me tonight. The more you say it, the more outrageous it becomes. Su Hanyu couldn't listen anymore and said to Chu Xuanyi, let's go out of the palace together. Chu Xuanyi didn't say anything. He glanced at Xian Yuanyao and Xie Jin, who were arm in arm, and his expression couldn't help but become darker. After walking out of the imperial garden, Su Hanyu said lightly, "I always have a very strange feeling today." "What does it feel like?" "The Prince of Waynan looks handsome and elegant, but in fact he is arrogant and unruly. He has never paid attention to the noble son of the imperial capital, but his attitude towards the regent is really puzzling, like." Su Hanyu thought for a while. "Like a mouse meets a cat." Chu Xuanyi said calmly, "Strong people are arrogant, but if they meet someone stronger, they usually have only two reactions. One is jealousy and disobedience, and the other is awe and submission." "So you think Xian Yuanyao's attitude towards the regent belongs to the latter?" Chu Xuanyi nodded, "Probably, and the identity of King Huainan is somewhat sensitive. Now is the critical period of succession and power change. They should be low-key and humble." Su Hanyu's eyebrows deepened slightly. Even if Xian Yuanyao's low profile is understandable, what about Xie Jin? What's wrong with Xie Jin? No one in the capital knows the name of the ninth master of the Xie family. Su Hanyu glanced at him. This is truly a master who has no relatives. Do you need me to say more? Chu Xuanyi's eyebrows were faint. You mean, Xie Jin's attitude is also a bit strange. Being completely convinced by a man when you first meet him can happen to anyone, but it will never happen to Xie Jin. Chu Xuanyi nodded. Well, I agree with your point of view. Su Hanyu looked gloomy. So is it possible that Xie Jin knew wrong you before? Do you have evidence? Chu Xuanyi asked calmly. Besides, even if they know each other, what does it mean? Su Hanyu was silent for a moment, and his tone became heavy. Does it count as collusion with the enemy? Chu Xuanyi looked at him in surprise. Princess Feng is about to ascend the throne. Rong Yu will be the regent of Dongling. Do you think Xie Jin's closeness to them at this time counts as collusion with the enemy? Who is the enemy? Su Hanyu said calmly, you should understand what I mean. Collaboration with the enemy, of course, is not collusion with the enemy today, but before Princess Feng and the regent came. But he obviously also understood that what he said was no longer tenable at the moment. After all, no matter what happened in the past, Princess Feng and the regent are indeed members of the Dongling royal family, and they are also supreme and noble. There is no crime that can be put on them. But he knew in his heart that Xie Jin's behavior today was abnormal, not just Xie Jin, including Xian Yuanqi, Xian Yuanyao, and even Mo Lingan and Chu Nanyi. Except for Mo Suanwu, who had not spoken much, everyone else seemed to know Rong Yu very well, and they did not show any hostility towards the regent from the Great Zhou, but rather had an inexplicable awe. The expected provocations, conflicts, and discussions were all gone. The scene was so harmonious that it felt like a family dinner. Only Su Hanyu, not sure if it was his illusion, always felt like he was under siege, because this feeling was not very obvious, and because several young masters in the flower hall had not spoken much, he ignored this feeling. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 342. Xie Jin's attitude towards Chu Nanyi is also unusual. Su Hanyu frowned. Maybe even your brother doesn't know when his relationship with Xie Jin became so good. Chu Xuanyi said calmly, the Chu family has an open family tradition, and I have never asked about the movements of my younger brothers and sisters. Chu Hong'ai, a girl, can lead troops in war, let alone Chu Nanyi, the second young master? Su Hanyu glanced at him and said nothing. Thinking of Xie Jin and Xian Yuanyao, a deep light flashed across his eyes. The ladies who stayed in the imperial garden were led by Aunt Su and Aunt Ji to wander around for a while. When they heard that Princess Feng was tired and had returned to the East Palace, the ladies asked each other if they wanted to leave the palace now. Jia went to the East Palace with Princess Feng. Xian Yu and Dan looked around, swilling, are you going to the East Palace? Xian Yuan Swilling had just heard that Princess Feng had invited all the Xian Yuan clan's young masters to gather in the East Palace. She said they had important matters to discuss. She thought it would be quite lively, so she nodded, go. After saying this, she walked up to Chu Hongii and said, General Chu, let's go together. Xian Yuanqi was also a prince of the royal family and was invited to the East Palace, so Chu Hongii only remained silent for a moment before nodding, yes. The three of them walked out of the plum garden together and met Fang Lanyi and Ji Weiner at the exit. The two of them obviously stood here waiting for Chu Hongii on purpose. There was no surprise. Xian Yuanswilling raised her eyebrows at the two of them and spoke first, Miss Fang, in terms of first come, first served, Prince Ji has an engagement with General Chu first. In terms of relationship, the young couple have a deep love for each other and are like glue. Now that General Chu is even pregnant with Prince Ji's child, what's the point of continuing to pester Prince Ji, besides ruining your reputation? Fang Lanyi ignored the little princess's words and looked at Chu Hongii calmly, is the child in your belly really for the heir apparent? What's that? Xian Yuanswilling frowned, otherwise it's still yours. Chu Hongii looked indifferent and had no intention of paying attention to her. General Chu, don't you dare to answer. Ji Weiner looked at Chu Hongii for a moment, Lanyi just asked you dash. Ji Weiner, when your mother gave birth to you, did she starve you because she didn't have enough milk? Xian Yuanswilling looked at her in disbelief and pointed at her head, is there no problem here for you? Ji Weiner's face changed slightly, what do you mean? What do you mean? Xian Yuanswilling sneered, I was used as a weapon and I didn't even know it. I forgot the lesson before the slap mark on my face disappeared. Although this princess is not smart, I have never seen you act like this stupid people. Ji Weiner gritted her teeth, you. And Miss Fang Xian Yuanswilling's eyes fell coldly on Fang Lanyi's face, the most important thing is self-knowledge and self-respect. Girls who have not left the court should pay more attention to their own integrity and protect their reputation. If you can get a response from your persistent stalking, it will not be in vain. But even though you know that Qi Shizi hates you very much, you still try to get in touch with you again and again. Don't you know how to write reserved? Your mother never taught you that a girl should respect herself? Fang Lanyi said calmly, I only know that the princess is in charge of Prince Jing's mansion. The implication is that she is the daughter-in-law of Princess Jing, but Chu Hongii is not even qualified to step into the palace. You don't need to worry about this. Chu Hongii's voice was as cold as frost, my marriage to Xian Yuanqi will not be held in Prince Jing's mansion. If you fall in love with Princess Jing, you can move there at any time. This general will not disturb you. You don't bother me, general. After saying this, she obviously had no interest in getting into any more entanglements with her, so she turned around and left. If Prince Ji doesn't live in the palace, why should I go to the palace? Fang Lanyi frowned and said in a cold tone, does General Chu want Prince Ji to sever his relationship with Princess Jing? Don't you think you are too selfish? Selfish? Chu Hongii stopped, turned to look at her for a moment, then slowly walked up to her. Fang Lanyi's expression changed slightly, and she took half a step back unconsciously. Then she realized her cowardly move, and raised her eyes to look at Chu Hongii in embarrassment. Fang Lanyi, you probably don't know what you are. Chu Hongii reached out and grabbed her chin. The force under her beautiful fingertips was not as weak as a girl's at all, and her voice was filled with a bone-crushing chill. I've had a good temper these past 2 days and don't want to hit anyone, but that doesn't mean I have a bad temper. If you make a mistake in front of me again, do you believe I will make it impossible for you to get married in your life? Fang Lanyi's jaw hurt from being pinched by her, and her face turned pale. She grabbed her hand and tried to break free from her grip, let me go. Chu Hongii, what are you doing? Ji Weiner's expression changed and she unconsciously raised her voice, let her go dash. And you? Chu Hongii turned her head and stared at Ji Weiner coldly, if Xian Yuanqi's 2 slaps don't scare you, I, the general, don't mind letting you have a taste of the whip. Ji Weiner's expression changed, you dare. You can try. Chu Hong I retracted her hand, her eyes like a frosty sword. Get out. Fang Lanyi and Ji Weiner's expressions both changed drastically. Snap, snap, snap. A burst of slow applause rang out, and several people turned their heads to look at the same time, only to see Shi Shiren, a magnificent and noble young man walking over, with a gentle smile on his lips and his eyes locked on his wife for a moment. With cold eyebrows, the lady is domineering, she loves her husband so much, she looks like this. Heaven and earth, the scenery is prosperous. He only has eyes for the heroic little girl, and no one else is even worthy of being a foil. Xian Yuanqi walked up to Chu Hong'ai, stretched out his hand and put his arm around her waist and brought her into his arms. He lowered his head and kissed her eyebrows and eyes. He didn't even look at Fang Lanyi and Ji Waner, who were stiff-faced on the opposite side. He just lowered his head and looked at Chu Hong'ai gently, wife, except for not killing the king and the father, anyone in this world who dares to make you unhappy can be whipped to death with a whip, and after being whipped to death, you will be responsible for the aftermath for your husband. Xian Yuansuiling, who was forgotten on the side, was shocked. Prince Qi looked at the beautiful and weak girl, and it turned out to be so domineering? Fang Lanyi bit her lip, her face was pale and blue, and she stared at the gentle man in disbelief. Such a delicate and soft face, such gentle and affectionate eyebrows and eyes. But the other party's gentleness was not given to her, but to Chu Hong'ai, a woman who was not dignified and gentle at all. Fang Lanyi clenched her hands tightly, the jealousy in her heart was like a bone-eating poison, like a vine growing wildly, corroding her heart bit by bit, clamoring to destroy the enemy and take this person for herself. She was unwilling. Why could Chu Hong'ai easily get his love? Why was she so humble and still despised and hated? You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 343. Is it because Chu Hong'ai holds military power? Because Chu Hong'ai is different from the dignified and elegant ladies of today? Or is it because Chu Hong'ai knows martial arts and can protect him? Fang Lanyi stared at the backs of the two people leaving, her lips were almost bitten to blood, and a strong resentment and unwillingness arose in her eyes. Ji Waner took in her expression and was silent for a moment. Lanyi, I think. If you want to persuade me to give up, don't say it. Fang Lanyi retracted her gaze and gently closed her eyes to hide the gloomy color in her eyes. I won't give up, Waner, you don't know when I started to like him. I will not marry anyone else in this life. If it weren't for Prince Qi, I would rather not marry for life. Ji Waner was silent for a moment and frowned slightly, but Prince Qi only has Chu Hong'ai in his heart. There will be a way, Fang Lanyi murmured, not knowing whether she was telling Ji Waner or persuading herself. As long as I really want to get him, I will always find a way. On the way back to the East Palace, Rong Yu listened to Nan 11's explanation of the cause and effect of the matter. After thinking for a moment, he decided to hand the matter over to Xiejin. Xiejin, Rong Yu nodded, he is willful and unconventional. He is used to doing whatever he wants. He is also proficient in all kinds of means to make people cautious. The sons of the major families in the imperial capital are afraid of him, and the Prince of Wei is no exception. Xiejin is ruthless and willful, wanton and reckless. When he is gentle, he makes people feel like spring breeze, but when he is vicious, he makes people feel scared. The most important thing is that his father is the prime minister of the dynasty, with a high position and power. He really pampers Xiejin and is afraid that he is not pampering enough. Looking at the entire imperial capital, no one dares to offend Xiejin. Even the Prince of Wei has to weigh the arrogant temper of Mr. Xieju. So it is most appropriate to leave this matter to him. Nan 11 pondered for a moment and nodded slowly, just make your decision. So the matter was settled, but Siejin was still Siejin, and what should be understood still needed to be understood. So after these young masters entered the main hall and sat down to drink a cup of tea, Rong Yu asked them to go to the study room first. Except for Xianyuan Qi, who turned to pick up his wife halfway, Xianyuan Yu, Xianyuan Yao, Siejin and Chu Nanyi all went to the study room. Nan 11 sat down on the brocade couch in the inner hall. Rong Yu ordered someone to summon the imperial physician to check Nan 11's pulse as a routine. After confirming that her physical condition was normal and there was nothing wrong, Rong Yu let Xianyuan Hua and Xianyuan Chen enter the hall. "I'll be back soon." Rong Yu lowered his head and stared at Nan 11's gentle face, and couldn't help kissing her forehead. "Thank you for the plum blossoms you gave me, I like them very much." Nan 11 smiled lightly, "Like plum blossoms?" Rong Yu said in a low voice, "I like the plum blossoms you gave me." Nan 11 looked at him quietly, and suddenly shouted, "Ayu!" Rong Yu was startled. "Today I heard Master Hua call Master Chen Akin, and I think this way of addressing is particularly intimate." Nan 11 pursed her lips and smiled, "Do you like it?" Rong Yu raised the corner of his lips, "I like it. Then I will often call you this in the future." Nan 11 reached out to help him straighten his robe. "Go to the study first, don't let them wait too long." Rong Yu hummed, and couldn't help but kiss her face again, and then turned and left. Xianyuan Hua and Xianyuan Chen stepped into the palace door and greeted Rong Yu, who came out of the inner hall. The two bowed slightly, and when Rong Yu walked out of Fenghua Palace, they turned around and saluted Nan 11. These two bastards of the royal palace did not have the qualifications to go to the study to discuss matters because they did not have official positions. Of course, they had never thought of becoming ministers in front of the regent and Princess Feng. The status of a bastard has always been embarrassing and low. When making a living under the care of his mother and brother, luck is sometimes an important factor that cannot be ignored. Xianyuan Hua of Prince Jing's mansion is obviously much luckier than Xianyuan Chen of Prince Wei's mansion. Although he also needs to be cautious, he will not be punished or abused at every turn, and his life is relatively safe and happy. And if what Xianyuan Hua said in the plum garden is true, then it is not an exaggeration to describe Xianyuan Chen's life in Prince Wei's mansion from childhood to adulthood as being in purgatory. It was approaching lunchtime, and the two female officials in charge led the palace people to prepare lunch. Before that, they had presented the cakes that had just come out of the pot in the imperial kitchen for Princess Feng to taste. Nan 11 sat at the table, motioned Jia Jia to sit down, and said to Xianyuan Hua and the others calmly, "You all sit down too." The two thanked them, but did not sit down. At this time, Xianyuan Qi, Chu Hongii and Xianyuan Swiling, who were one step behind, also came in. After entering the hall and paying their respects, Xianyuan Qi spoke first, "Does the princess cousin have something important to say?" Nan 11 raised her eyebrows, "What?" Xianyuan Qi said, "Hongii and I have something urgent to deal with, and we probably can't stay in the palace for long." Nan 11 naturally understood what he was going to deal with, and nodded, "You go back first. Rong Yu is talking to them in the study. I have something to say to Master Hua and Master Chen. It's nothing particularly important." The purpose of her letting the Master Xianyuan come to the East Palace was just to have a legitimate excuse to see Xianyuan Chen. It didn't matter whether Xianyuan Qi and Chu Hongii stayed or not. Xianyuan Qi hummed, his eyes swept across Xianyuan Hua and Xianyuan Chen, but he didn't think much about it. He only cared about Chu Hongii now, and other things could be figured out later. General Chu has not been pregnant for long. She is still in the dangerous period these 2 days. It is best for her to take care of the baby and not use force. Nan 11 reminded, "Cousin, you need to pay more attention to her." Xianyuan Qi nodded, "Thank you for your concern, Your Highness. I know." The two of them took their leave and walked out. Nan 11 once again invited Xianyuan Swiling, Xianyuan Dan, and the two concubines to sit down. "There is nothing else to do, just chat with you." It will be more relaxed if you sit down. Don't be nervous. Xianyuan Chen and Xianyuan Hua could not refuse and had to sit down. They are actually only a little older than Nan 11. If it were not for the difference in status, the young men and women of this age in the clan family would have a lot to talk about when they sit together. It's just that the status of the monarch and the minister in the royal family is not allowed to be usurped, not to mention that the status of the concubines is even lower, and a huge gap between the superior and the inferior is instantly opened. The palace servants served them tea. The regent is still short of a few tutors. Nan 11 held the teacup and said straight to the point, "Are you two willing to serve the regent?" Xianyuan Hua and Xianyuan Chen are of the same age, born in the same year, but in different months. They are half-adult men between youth and teenagers. When they heard what Princess Feng said, they were both stunned. Tutors for the regent? Xianyuan Hua looked at Nan 11 in surprise. Me and Aiken. Author has something to say. Fui means just now, not a person's name. As soon as you enter the door, as soon as you arrive home, it means just now entering the door, just now arriving home. Babies, you can ask if you don't understand anything, I will answer it when I see it. The protagonist's name is wrong you fourth tone. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 344. Nan 11 nodded, you are all young now. As long as you have enough knowledge, it should be no problem to be a tutor. Xianyuan Chen lowered his eyes in silence and did not respond for a while. Nan 11 took a sip of tea and smiled calmly. The regent is a person with military power. Although he has been in charge of the government in the Great Zhou before, he has just come to Dongling and his foundation is still shallow. He needs to cultivate confidence. You should understand what I mean. The tutor is just a saying. In fact, it is just to follow the regent and obey orders and gain experience. Rong Yu is a man with strong skills and a cold temperament. The habits he has developed from training the army must be extremely strict, so the tasks around him are not easy to do. He needs to be strong in all aspects and have a certain ability to bear, otherwise he can't take it at all. People with mediocre qualifications or narrow vision cannot stay with the regent for a long time. However, if you are lucky enough to be noticed by the regent and can persist, you will definitely gain a lot in the end. Xianyuan Hua weighed it in his heart. He guessed that Princess Feng wanted to give their bastard a chance after listening to his words, and didn't want Xianyuan Chen's knowledge to be buried, and after he came to the side of the regent, the Princess of Wei and her son would no longer have the opportunity to abuse and torture Aiken. But he was still weighing the pros and cons. Weighing the many facts they could not change, and the consequences that might be caused by agreeing to this matter, such as the dissatisfaction of the stepmother at home, the inquiry of his father, and other uncontrollable things. But after thinking about it, he still felt that there was nothing worse than Aiken's current situation. The only thing he needed to consider was Aiken's biological mother. What should he do if Xianyuan Yan took his anger out on his biological mother after Aiken was out of control? According to the rules of the royal family, illegitimate sons cannot serve in the court unless they get the consent of their father and mother. Xianyuan Hua said truthfully, Your Highness's good intentions. The rank of the tutor is very low. If the legitimate son is given the position, it would be unfair to the sons of the major families. Nan 11 said in a light tone, besides, there is no reason for me to abandon the sons of the royal family and let outsiders occupy these important positions. Xianyuan Hua understood. The rank of tutor is indeed not high, and it can even be said to be low, but there has always been a saying that the seventh rank official in front of the prime minister, and the tutor beside the regent is an important position that many people are eager to get even if the rank is low. Just like the chief steward beside the emperor, that is the place closest to the center of power. If you perform well in the future and can be trusted and reused by the regent, even if you can't soar to the sky, you will have great gains in your official career. Besides, Xianyuan Hua and Xianyuan Chen are not old, it is the right time to accumulate experience. I heard that young Master Chen's mother is not in good health. Nan 11's eyes fell on Xian Yuan Chen. I will ask the imperial physician to take a look later. If medicine can be used, use it well, recuperate if necessary, and use whatever herbs are needed. If the imperial hospital does not have it, let Rong Yu get it from somewhere else. Paused. By the way, Rong Yu has a subordinate who is proficient in medical skills, much better than the imperial physicians in the imperial hospital. I will ask later if I can write a letter to ask him to come over and take good care of Aunt Jiao. Xian Yuan Chen's heart couldn't help but tremble. If he still didn't know what the princess meant at this time, he would be too slow. He stood up, lifted his clothes and knelt down, solemnly bowing. I thank Princess Feng. I don't need your thanks, Nan 11 said in a light tone. I heard from Mr. Hua that you are a knowledgeable and talented, noble, and a rare talent. Xian Yuan Chen, I give you a chance, not to make you grateful, but to make you use your talents to the fullest, and repay me with loyalty and ability. I can make you worry-free in this life, let your biological mother live a healthy and smooth life, and let you get rid of Xian Yuan Yan's control from now on, but this is not an unconditional favor, but requires you to repay with a lifetime of loyalty. Xian Yuan Hua clenched the teacup, and a wave of unprecedented shock came from his heart. Princess Feng. This woman is too smart, and she knows how to think about others. She has the dignity and benevolence of a crown prince, and at the same time she is so kind and has a strong heart of tolerance. She was unwilling to benevolent from a high position, but helped others in another way, which made people feel grateful and respected, saved her face, and covered up the wounds that she did not want to be known. How many men could compare to such a woman? The high priest made a very correct decision. Dongling abandoned Xian Yuan Yan and welcomed such a crown prince. It was the luck of all the people in Dongling. You get up first, Nan 11 said to Xian Yuan Chen, turned around and ordered, Madam Su, you will go to the imperial hospital later and arrange for the imperial physician to accompany Mr. Xia and Mr. Chen to the Prince of Wei's mansion. After confirming the diagnosis, come and report to me. Madam Su nodded, yes. Xian Yuan Dan, Xian Yuan Xia, and Xian Yuan Swilling listened to Nan 11 quietly. Except for Jia who understood the cause and effect of the matter, the other two girls were a little confused. They seemed to understand a little, but they were not very clear about the details. They were just silent for a while. The head aunt quickly led the palace servants to prepare lunch, a table full of delicious food. The dishes were placed on the table one by one. Rong Yu, who had just finished the meeting, walked in from outside, followed by Xian Yuan Yao and others. After entering the hall, he saluted Nan 11 as usual. Nan 11 smiled faintly, are you done talking? Rong Yu hummed. Stay and have lunch before leaving. Nan 11 ordered the palace servants to prepare seats for the young masters. After lunch, Mr. Xia, please go to the Prince of Wei's mansion for me. Go to the Prince of Wei's mansion, Xie Jin raised his eyebrows slightly, as if a little surprised. Why go to the Prince of Wei's mansion? Nan 11 said calmly, concubine Qiao is not in good health. I sent the imperial physician to see her. However, I didn't get along very well with the Prince of Wei and his wife these 2 days. I don't want to go in person, so I'll trouble you. Not getting along very well? Xie Jin pondered for a moment, and raised a smile at the corner of his lips. Your Highness has an order, and I will obey it. As he said, he turned his head and glanced at Xian Yuan Chen, carefully examining his face. Mr. Chen doesn't look very well, let the imperial physician take a look at Mr. Chen later. Xian Yuan Chen's expression was slightly tense, and his eyes were gentle. Thank you for your concern, Mr. Chen is in good health. Xie Jin raised his hand to his lips, his voice lazy but unquestionable. I don't like others to refuse, Mr. Chen should cooperate a little. Xian Yuan Chen was speechless. Really domineering. Xian Yuan Yao shook his head. When I gave him the cloak just now, I thought Ajin was very warm, so warm that I was jealous, but I didn't expect that he would show his true colors now. It's true that you can't trust the gentleness of a lion. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 345. The news that Chu Hong'ai was pregnant and married to Qi Shiza soon spread throughout the major families. Naturally, what they were concerned about was not Chu Hong'ai's pregnancy, but the marriage between the Chu family and Prince Jing's palace. Once Chu Hong'ai married into Prince Jing's palace, it meant that in addition to being a prince, Prince Jing's palace would have a daughter-in-law with military power. Chu Hong'ai has a lot of weight in speaking in front of Her Royal Highness Princess Feng, and as a woman, she has an advantage that other civil and military officials do not have. A woman holds military power, is in the court, and has a strong relationship with the future queen. There will be more opportunities for contact, and more opportunities for reuse and trust. In this way, Prince Jing's mansion will be more rigid than other princes' mansions, so the benefits this advantage brings to Prince Jing's mansion are foreseeable. As for the Chu family, after getting married to Prince Jing's mansion, the Chu family will reach a higher level among the aristocratic families in the imperial capital. After the queen ascends the throne, how will the order of the four major Dongling families, the Xie family, the Chu family, the Mo family, and the Su family, change? What kind of changes will the power of the courtiers above the court undergo? How many people are secretly paying attention, waiting for the most appropriate response at any time? Prince Jing and his wife also received the news immediately. Chu Hong'ai is pregnant. Prince Jing frowned. When did it happen? His personal guard bowed and replied, the news came from the palace. Her Royal Highness Princess Feng has sent the imperial physician to check General Chu's pulse and confirmed the matter. General Chu is pregnant for more than a month. More than a month? Prince Jing frowned slightly and calculated the time. It happened when Chu Hong'ai went to Dazhu to pick up Princess Feng. Moreover, she had been staying with Xian Yuanqi all the way. There was no need to doubt who this child belonged to. This is not what Prince Jing cares about. Sitting down on the chair silently, he said in a cold tone, my daughter's pregnancy is a private matter, why did it become so widespread? It would be too hasty if Princess Feng deliberately spread the news in order to allow Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong'ai to get married smoothly. Does your daughter's family's reputation allow such indiscriminate behavior? I heard that the princess's niece, Miss Ji, insulted General Chu at the palace banquet and was slapped by the prince. This alarmed Princess Feng. After Princess Feng asked, she found out that Miss Ji had made rude remarks and insulted General Chu because of his pregnancy. So he was beaten because he angered the prince. The guard stated truthfully, Princess Feng didn't want General Chu to ruin his reputation in front of everyone, so she told them that General Chu and the prince were married in Zhou dynasty, and the child was also the prince's, so this matter came out like this. Ji Wan'er, Prince Jing looked ugly. How did she know that Chu Hong'ai was pregnant? The guard lowered his head and said, Miss Fang from Zhenkuagong's mansion told her. Upon hearing these words, Prince Jing's expression suddenly turned cold. He didn't expect that such a simple thing would involve so many people. Fang Lanyi? What a great move to kill someone with a borrowed knife. Prince Jing sat in the chair expressionlessly, secretly thinking that Miss Fang probably didn't know in advance that the child in Chu Hong'ai's belly was Xian Yuanqi's, so he couldn't wait to ruin her reputation. Such a vicious plan, how could a dignified and gentle lady behave like this? With a cold and angry expression, Prince Jing stood up and walked out of the main courtyard. He happened to see Princess Jing coming in a hurry. He stopped and glanced at his wife expressionlessly. Your Majesty, Princess Jing's expression was not good looking, and her tone was cold and angry. Qi is going to marry Chu Hong'ai, but the wedding ceremony is not held in Prince Jing's mansion. Does the prince know about this? It's simply treasonous. There is still something in his eyes. Are there parents like us? You still have the nerve to say it, Prince Jing interrupted her coldly, with anger in his tone. I told you before that they had a marriage contract, and Cheer has identified Chu Hong Ai. You have to fight with them, and you have to drag the daughter of the Duke of Zhen into it. Now, if you end up in this situation, I'll see how you end up. Princess Jing was so scolded by him that she couldn't stand her face. Her face turned red and white. She wanted to argue but felt powerless. Don't I also want someone to be gentle and dignified? Which one do you prefer, the gentle and dignified one, or do you prefer Cheer? Princess Jing was speechless. Prince Jing took a deep breath and suppressed his gloomy and unhappy emotions, but his tone still couldn't hide his anger. Do you think Fang Lanyi is gentle and dignified? If she was really a gentle and dignified woman, she would not plot against Ji Weiner. Prince Jing, can't afford to stand up for her and ruin Chu Hong Ai's reputation in front of so many noble ladies. Princess Jing was silent for a moment, feeling angry that Fang Lanyi had used such vicious and stupid methods, but she had chosen the man, and she had nothing to say at this time. I didn't think carefully about this matter, she said calmly. I didn't expect Fang Lanyi to act so imprudently. It's just the marriage between Cheer and Hong Yi. Prince Jing frowned. What do you think we should do? I'll go talk to Chu Hong Ai, Princess Jing said calmly. Just do whatever you want to do about the marriage. Chu Hong Ai is a girl who understands the general situation. She shouldn't just watch Cheer break off the relationship with us. She knew that her son was still angry, and nothing she could say to him at this time would work, so she might as well go directly to Chu Hong Ai. Now you know that she has general knowledge. Prince Jing was annoyed. What have you been doing? Princess Jing was at a loss for words. Don't I just want someone who is obedient? She wields swords and guns, and I'm afraid that Cheer will be crushed by her in the future. What are you suppressing? Prince Jing frowned, not knowing what to say. How much do you know about your son over the years? Who do you think taught Chu Hong Ai what she learned? Cheer asked her to suppress him because she liked him, not because she was not as skilled as her. Prince Jing's wife's face changed slightly, and her expression changed several times. In the end, she had to compromise. Isn't it okay if I don't care? Cheer's affairs will be decided by him in the future, and I will never interfere again. He can do whatever he wants. As long as Chu Hong Ai gives birth to this child safely, I will stay at home and enjoy my grandchildren. I don't care about anything else. After saying that, she turned and walked out. I'll go to the Chu family now. Prince Jing stared at her back in silence, and after a moment, he said calmly, I'll go with you. Since it is a marriage between two families, it is natural to sit down and have a good talk with the head of the Chu family. How can it be hasty? Prince Jing raised his feet to follow her steps, and said coldly as he walked, Cheer marrying Chu Hong Ai will benefit both Prince Jing's mansion and the Chu family. Cheer likes Chu Hong Ai so much. If you want to ease the relationship between mother and son, you'd better not cause trouble for Chu Hong Ai in the future. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 346. The couple quickly arrived in a carriage outside the Chu family's gate. The Chu family is currently discussing their marriage. In the main hall, the head of the Chu family, Chu Yinja and Mrs. Chu were sitting on the left and right sides of the main seat, with 2 cups of hot tea placed on the tables. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong Ai were sitting on the lower left side of him, and Chu Xuanyi was sitting on the right. After Xian Yuanqi finished speaking his plan, Chu Yinja silently picked up the teacup, with no expression on his majestic and solemn face. As if thinking about something. Princess Fen means that you can give me a crown prince's mansion, or give Hong Yi a general's mansion, so that we can go out and start our own business. Xian Yuanqi said indifferently, I want to set the date first, pick a good and auspicious day, and find a matchmaker. Master the butler outside the hall reported respectfully, Prince Jing and Princess Jing are here. The hall fell silent. Xian Yuanqi's expression suddenly darkened. Chu Yinja's eyes fell on Xian Yuanqi's face and he said calmly, "What is your father's attitude towards your marriage to Hong Ai?" Xian Yuanqi was silent for a moment and said calmly, "He has no objection. This marriage was originally decided by Prince Jing and Chu Yinja. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong Ai have been so close to each other over the years, so they naturally have no reason to object. Since Prince Jing and Princess are here, let's listen to their opinions." Chu Yinja said lightly, "If you and Hong Yi are not comfortable listening, you can stay away for a while. It's nothing inconvenient." Xian Yuanqi smiled lightly, "Since everyone is here, I just want to take this opportunity to make everything clear." He had made up his mind. Whether it was in front of his prospective father-in-law or in front of his mother, he had firmly stated his attitude. No one could influence his thoughts. So there is no need to avoid it. Chu Yinja said nothing and ordered the housekeeper to directly invite Prince Jing and his wife in. After a while, the housekeeper led Prince Jing and his wife in. The Chu family couple stood up to greet them. They met with each other and exchanged some polite words. Then Chu Xuanyi and Chu Hong'ai humbly received the junior ceremony and invited Prince Jing and his wife to take their seats. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong'ai stood up and gave up their seats to Prince Jing and his wife. The servants added 2 more chairs. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong'ai sat down next to Chu Xuanyi. Both of them looked calm and could not see any special emotions. After Princess Jing sat down, she glanced at Xian Yuanqi who was opposite and Chu Hong'ai who was silent. She pursed her lips slightly and said straight to the point, "Your father and I came here to discuss your marriage. Hong'ai is now because of my special health, it is not appropriate to delay the marriage any longer. It should be done as soon as possible." Xian Yuanqi looked at her calmly and did not answer anything. The words of the previous 2 conversations still lingered in his ears. Although he could hear the compromise in his mother's words, he would not take it lightly. "The prince and I were discussing this matter just now." Chu Yinja smiled faintly, "Children are all willful, and we as elders have to worry more. Hong Ai's behavior is really against the ancestral precepts. If it weren't for the Chu family's family tradition, if you are enlightened, you must impose family laws on her and drive her out of the house to correct the family rules." "What did Brother Chu say?" Prince Jing sighed, with a look of shame and self-blame. "If there is a mistake, this matter is also Chi'er's fault. It was my fault in teaching my son that I wronged Hong Yi. He was criticized. If he had not been in a hurry to discuss the marriage of his 2 children, I would have really wanted to take him back and punish him with family law, so that the anger between Brother Chu and me could be quelled." Hearing this, Chu Yinja said calmly, "If a slap can't make a difference, this matter cannot be entirely blamed on the prince. According to me, both of them should be punished together to avoid becoming more and more lawless in the future. Chi'er has thick skin and rough flesh. Just punish him." Prince Jing said quickly, "Hong Ai is delicate now and needs to be protected." "Yes, Hong Ai is very delicate now." Princess Jing spoke at the right time, with a gentle smile on her lips, "Although I did some things I shouldn't have done before getting married, and I really should be taught a lesson, but the relationship between the 2 children is just right. When we are young, we are still engaged, so it is excusable. As long as we, as elders, do not criticize harshly, others have no right to say anything." Xian Yuanqi raised his eyebrows slightly, looking at his mother whose attitude suddenly changed, and calmly turned his head to look at Chu Hong'ai. Chu Hong'ai's face was expressionless. "Having said that, I still feel that such a thing is really inappropriate." Mrs. Chu frowned, "I reprimanded Hong Yi when she came back from the palace. Although she is a military commander, she is still a daughter. You should still pay attention to your reputation, and you can't do everything according to your temper. Fortunately, the prince and princess are tolerant. If you encounter someone with strict family rules I don't like hearing what my sister said. Princess Jing pretended to be dissatisfied. Obviously the person who made the mistake was Chi-er. What does it have to do with Hong Yi? Fortunately, Chi-er was determined to marry Hong Yi, and the two of them people have deep feelings, otherwise his behavior would have forced the prince to break one of his legs. Xian Yuanqi relaxed his body and leaned back on the chair, listening to his mother's performance silently and with interest, and by the way, he could tell whether some of the words she said at this time were sincere and some were false. Prince Jing and the head of the Chu family are both colleagues in the court and quasi-in-laws. They have a style of talking like an old fox. Whether it is true or false, they can always speak to each other's heart and make people feel happy. Mrs. Chu and Princess Jing, they complimented each other politely, treating each other's children as their own children to pet, and using their own children as a source of criticism. They all sounded extremely sincere and made people feel extremely comfortable. It's like all the previous dissatisfaction and disputes don't exist. Xian Yuanqi felt a bit bored, so he took Hong Ai's hand and put it in his palm, like a playful child, gently playing with her slender 5 fingers, lightly touching the thin calluses on her palm due to long-term sword practice, slowly, circle after circle on her palm. Chu Hong Ai glanced at him. Xian Yuanqi smiled and wrote on her palm, "Wife." Chu Hong Ai's indifferent eyebrows softened by 3 points, and she pinched his fingers quietly, signaling him to be more obedient. The marriage was decided in a hurry, and we haven't had time to prepare the betrothal gifts, so we may need to wait another 2 days. Princess Jing said, Hong Ai has a special body, so the wedding ceremony will be a little simple, and some unnecessary procedures can be omitted, but the scene must be grand, and the betrothal gifts must be prepared generously, so that the Dongling family can see the importance of the palace to Hong Ai. Xian Yuanqi's eyebrows moved slightly. Well, he had to admit that Princess Jing's words touched his heart. Hong Ai is pregnant now, so many unnecessary procedures can indeed be omitted to prevent her from being too tired, but the grand ceremony must be done, especially the betrothal gift, which must not be done hastily. He wants all the noble families and subjects of Dongling to see his importance to Hong Ai, so as to offset the impact of the rumors in the palace today on her, although they don't care much about the so-called rumors. Author's words. This chapter is an extra chapter for today. If nothing unexpected happens tomorrow, there should be an extra chapter. There will be no update tonight. Good night, babies. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 347. The marriage was discussed by the Jingwan couple and the Chu family couple, and Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong Ai participated in the whole process. After nearly an hour of discussion, Xian Yuanqi was generally satisfied, if this was an attitude of his mother to show her softness, and if she really accepted Chu Hong Ai and stopped making other troubles. After the elders of both sides finished speaking, they were obviously very satisfied with the results of the discussion, and they were very happy with each other. Especially the younger generation did not interrupt in such an occasion, did not give face to the parents of both sides, and cooperated throughout the process, making people feel that they were particularly sensible. Prince Jing smiled and said to the head of the Chu family, "It's been a long time since we had a good drink together. Why don't I be thick-skinned today?" "What are you talking about?" Prince Jing was interrupted by the head of the Chu family before he finished speaking. "You are busy, and it's rare for you to come to my house. I have to treat you well." He quickly ordered the servants to prepare wine and food, and specifically asked them to take out the best aged wine in the house for the treat. Then the two brothers went to the study to discuss business. Mrs. Chu saw that Princess Jing had something to say to Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hong Ai, so she took the servants to the kitchen to see, and personally prepared wine and food. Chu Xuanyi also left quickly. In a blink of an eye, only the mother and son and Chu Hong Ai were left in the hall. "I heard about what happened in the palace today," Princess Jing said in a light tone. "What Fang Lanyi did was too unreliable, and your cousin was really outrageous." I will remind her to have less contact with Miss Fang in the future. Xian Yuanqi raised his eyebrows. Have less contact with Fang Lanyi? If her mother had not repeatedly expressed her love for Fang Lanyi, Ji Wan'er would not have been pushed out by Fang Lanyi to be used as a gun. Hong Ai Princess Jing took Chu Hong Ai's hand and said apologetically, "It was my prejudice in the past that caused you a lot of unhappiness. I will definitely do a good job for you this wedding, and promise that after entering the palace, no one will dare to make things difficult for you. Whether Chi wants to take a concubine in the future is also your own business. I won't ask dash." "What do you mean by taking a concubine is our own business?" Xian Yuanqi frowned. "Do I look like someone who would take a concubine?" Princess Jing paused and said, "I said I won't ask. If you want to take a concubine, take it. If you don't want to take a concubine, it's up to you. Isn't this okay?" Chu Hong Ai narrowed her eyes slightly and fell on her hands. "I don't like to have physical contact with people other than Xian Yuanqi, but this person is Xian Yuanqi's mother." Hong Ai Princess Jing ignored her son and carefully looked at Chu Hong Ai's heroic eyebrows. "She is so handsome." "Xian Yuanqi." Chu Hong Ai pursed her lips and was silent for a moment, then said lightly, "Thank you. I will have someone clean up the best courtyard in the palace when I go back this afternoon and make it a new house for you to get married dash." "No need," Xian Yuanqi said lightly, "I am used to living in Hongchen Garden, and we don't plan to get married in Jingwang Mansion." Princess Jing said lightly, "I am talking to Hong Ai, can you please not interrupt?" Xian Yuanqi raised his eyebrows. Chu Hong Ai glanced at him, and her eyes quickly fell back on Princess Jing's hand. "I really didn't. I'll have someone buy some new furniture and things these 2 days. You can tell me if you need anything." Princess Jing looked at Chu Hong Ai's belly. "I'll make some small clothes for the child when I have time. It's estimated that it should be born next summer, so make some summer clothes and shoes, and buy more baby toys. After the marriage, you just need to rest assured to take care of the baby, let Chi take good care of you, and when the child is born, I will take care of the child for you, and you can continue to hold your military power. The prince and I don't intend to interfere in your affairs. Do you think this is okay?" Xian Yuanqi said indifferently, "This is between Hong Ai and me, we will." "I'm talking to my daughter-in-law." Princess Jing glanced at him indifferently. "Can you be quiet for a while?" Xian Yuanqi didn't want to endure it anymore, so he pulled Hong Ai over and looked at his mother with a provocative look. "This is my wife." Princess Jing watched Chu Hong Ai being pulled away by him. Her hands froze for a moment, and then she slowly adjusted her sleeves. "Your father has already negotiated the marriage with your father-in-law. If you really want to upset him on the big day and make everyone look bad, you can do whatever you want." Xian Yuanqi said in a light tone, "Mother, don't you like the girl from the Fang family?" Princess Jing said, "I don't like her now, is it okay?" "Okay, of course," Xian Yuanqi said in a light tone, "but my wife is free to live wherever she wants in the future. She is pregnant, and the imperial physician said that she should keep a happy mood, not be angry, and pay more attention to rest, so it is probably impossible to do morning and evening visits, and I decided that after the marriage, I will accompany her to sleep until the sun shines on her butt every day dash." Xian Yuanqi Chu Hong Ai frowned and said in a light voice, "Shut up." Xian Yuanqi silently shut his mouth. Princess Jing was so angry that she said coldly, "I know my daughter-in-law and my grandson, and I don't need you to remind me." "Maybe it's a granddaughter," Xian Yuanqi said, "I prefer daughters." Princess Jing was repeatedly scolded, and she couldn't stand it no matter how good her temper was. "Xian Yuanqi, you are so presumptuous." "Princess, don't argue with him." Chu Hong Ai finally spoke. Her voice was light and calm. "The prince and princess only have him as their legitimate son. If you can accept me, we are willing to get married in the Prince Jing's mansion, but please consider it carefully and don't compromise for the sake of the child." Princess Jing frowned slightly. Chu Hong Ai said calmly, My personality is not pleasing, I know it myself, and I will not change it for anyone. If the princess wants me to be submissive like other girls, I probably can't do it. After getting married, the best way to get along is for me to maintain the courtesy of the younger generation to the prince and princess, and to get along with each other without interfering with each other. I also hope that the princess will try not to influence our lifestyle. After hearing this, Princess Jing was silent for a moment. To be honest, this is why she has never liked Chu Hongii. She doesn't know how to be tactful, she is too straightforward and cold, her temperament is completely lacking in the gentleness and obedience that girls should have nowadays, and she doesn't know how to please in a roundabout way when speaking in front of the elders. If Cheer didn't like it, she wouldn't tell her son about such a marriage. However, as Prince Jing said, their son likes it, which is something she can't control. If she doesn't want to have a bad relationship with her son, she must accept the fact that Chu Hongii is her daughter-in-law. Besides, the girl from the Fang family is not as good as she imagined. Whether it was the intentional or unintentional provocation in front of her that day, or what happened in the palace today, Princess Jing understood this point. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 348. A girl who looks gentle and submissive may not really be that gentle and submissive, maybe it's just her disguise. In order for the women in the boudoir of aristocratic families to better manage the family and establish authority after getting married, their mothers would teach them some methods of controlling their subordinates. Princess Jing also came here from that time. After being married to Prince Jing for so many years, although the backyard of the palace is simple, there is no messy pickling. It's a shame, but she has also seen the ways in which emperors and concubines compete for favor. She hates those insidious and dirty calculations, so although she treats the only concubine of Prince Jing's palace more harshly, she doesn't bother to use any means on her and Xian Yuanhua. As long as mother and son don't overstep their bounds and stick to their duties, the princess will not cause trouble for them. She has a strong desire to control and doesn't like others to disobey her. The concubine and concubine know her temper and are used to being submissive in front of her. In addition, she is determined not to allow the maids in the palace to hook up with the master. Over the years, the backyard of the palace has only in this way can we maintain peace and avoid causing trouble. Compared with the concubines competing for favor in the harem, Fang Lanyi's methods were not very clever, but they had aroused the disgust of Princess Jing. Even without Chu Hongii, after what happened today, she would never do it again. Let Fang Lanyi come in. She has a strong temper, so she doesn't like Chu Hongii, who is tougher than her, but if she has to choose between Fang Lanyi and Chu Hongii, she will only choose Chu Hongii at the moment. Not to mention being disrespectful, Chu Hongii would at least not play tricks with her. After all, people with cold temperaments are obviously easier to get along with than people who are full of scheming. What's more, after all, it can't be compared to her son's liking. Princess Jing was silent for a long time and said calmly, "I have already thought about it. I will be responsible for organizing your marriage. After you get married, you can raise the baby in peace at home. After the baby is born, you can do whatever you want. I will not interfere. You don't need to follow these rules deliberately, as long as you don't do anything that harms the reputation and interests of the palace. I won't go to your courtyard often after your wedding, and even if I do, I will inform you in advance, and I will never cross the boundary without permission." Her words had already shown enough sincerity. Any problems that might arise after the marriage were mentioned in advance and put on the record, so that they could understand her attitude. After pausing for a moment, she looked at Chu Hongii and Xian Yuanqi. "Do you have any other requests?" "Require?" Chu Hongii shook her head. She had never thought of making any request to Princess Jing. As for Xian Yuanqi, as a son, on the premise of ensuring that his wife will not be wronged, he naturally hopes that the relationship between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law will be harmonious. The words his mother just said can indeed be heard sincerely, and he can also feel her attitude of seeking peace today. It is not an easy thing for this usually strong mother to take the initiative to lower her body. He won't push past his limits. I have no other request, as long as mother doesn't embarrass Hongyi, he said calmly, although Hongyi is not good at sweet talk or coaxing others. My father and mother are elders after all. As long as what they say is reasonable, convince people with reason, and Hongyi and I will respect you and will never cause trouble to my father, the queen, my mother, and my concubine for no reason. After saying these words, even if he agreed to put aside the past grudges and take a step back from his mother, he could just pretend that the previous unpleasantness had never happened. Princess Jing nodded. In that case, you go back to the palace tonight, and we will sit together to discuss the details of the marriage and the layout of the new house. Xian Yuanqi glanced at Chu Hongyi, who nodded, yes. Princess Jing felt slightly relieved, and raised the teacup at hand to her lips. She was about to take a sip of tea to moisten her throat, but she saw Chu Hongyi reaching out to stop her and holding her teacup. The tea is cold. Princess Jing was startled. Chu Hongyi poured out her tea, asked the maid to prepare a new pot of hot tea, and then poured a cup of hot tea for Princess Jing herself. In addition to being in charge of the military, I will learn to be a good daughter-in-law. What else can I do? If I don't understand, I will ask you for advice. Princess Jing's heart was a little dazed, and an indescribable sourness filled the air. She didn't know what to say, so she just took a sip of tea and then smiled lightly. Okay. Xian Yuanqi raised his eyebrows, stretched out his hand to pull Chu Hongyi, lowered his head and kissed her on the face. Daughter-in-law. Princess Jing frowned. Be more serious. I'm very serious. Xian Yuanqi smiled. Hongyi and I have a good relationship, can't we show it in front of my mother? My mother must be tired of putting on airs for so many years. In fact, my father is not a romantic person. Mothers can stop being so forceful sometimes and try to soften their attitude to get along with the father, and you may get unexpected results. Princess Jing said coldly, what nonsense are you talking about? Which woman doesn't like to be pampered? Xian Yuanqi smiled lightly. A family should be like a family. If you follow the rules and put on airs, you won't feel tired, others will be stressed, and thanks to your father, he is not a romantic man, otherwise with such a strong attitude as his mother's, wouldn't he just drive his father into the arms of another woman? Princess Jing frowned. Okay, please stop saying a few words. Chu Hongyi started to stop him, and then said to Princess Jing, we will go there later. I'd like to trouble you about the marriage. Princess Jing actually didn't expect that Chu Hongyi would compromise so easily. After all, she had clearly expressed her displeasure with her, and her son was the one who would fall out with his mother because of her. This was the reason. Chu Hongyi can actually take the opportunity to put forward some conditions. But she didn't. Although his temperament is not gentle, he is not arrogant or arrogant either. Princess Jing thought of this, and the gloomy feeling in her heart dissipated a little. She put down the teacup and took off an jade bracelet from her wrist. I came in a hurry today and didn't bring anything else with me. I'll give this to you first. Chu Hongyi subconsciously refused. I know you martial arts practitioners don't like this, but this is what I want, keep it. Princess Jing put the bracelet in her palm. I will go to the palace later and go to the queen to ask for 2 better ones. For you. Chu Hongyi took the bracelet and said thank you. Your father and I are going to the palace, so I won't bother you here. Princess Jing looked at Xian Yuanqi. The marriage must be reported to the clan, and your father should go to your grandfather to report it. By the way, let's go see Princess Feng again. Xian Yuanqi nodded. The princess's cousin has a gentle temperament, but the regent next to her is a cold person, and the mother and concubine must be careful. When we met in the imperial garden today, I noticed that a Yao from the uncle's house in Huainan Wang seemed to be very familiar with the regent. Also, Xiaju of the Xie family is probably leaning towards the regent. Mother can give her father a warning and tell him to stay away from Prince Wei's palace in the future. The author has something to say. If you know your mistakes and can correct them, there is no greater good. In ancient times, filial piety was still very important. In addition to being controlling, Princess Jing actually had no major problems. In ancient times, she had strict requirements for women. It was normal for her to want a docile, knowledgeable, and sensible daughter-in-law, but she still compromised for the sake of her son. From now on I won't be a monster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 349. Stay away from the Prince of Wei's mansion? Princess Jing's eyebrows deepened slightly, and she nodded slowly, I know. The Prince of Wei's mansion used to be the residence of the crown prince, but Xian Yuanyan has always been in poor health. In recent years, he has been so weak that he has to rely on drugs to keep alive. There have been rumors in the imperial capital that he can't support the fate of the emperor, so his body is getting weaker and weaker, but there is only one supreme position, who is willing to give it up? In the past few days after Princess Feng came back, the reluctance of the Prince of Wei and his wife was shown in their words and deeds. Although the health of the emperor and Xian Yuanyan has improved visibly since Princess Feng returned to Dongling, the Prince of Wei obviously will not think that this is Princess Feng's credit. No matter what the reason, the relationship between the Princess Feng who is about to ascend the throne and the Prince of Wei's mansion is destined to be incompatible, and no one can predict whether the Prince of Wei's mansion will be content to keep its status as a minister. Thinking of this, Princess Jing couldn't help but realize again that what Prince Jing said was right. Chu Hongai's marriage to Prince Jing's mansion not only made Chi'er happy, but also brought great benefits to the mansion. Princess Feng ascended the throne and became the empress. There was a female general in front of the palace, which could be more convenient in many cases. Many advantages that male generals could not get in front of the empress, Chu Hongai could get. Regent Rongyu was a very jealous person. If the empress favored other ministers too much, it might cause dissatisfaction from the regent. However, for Chu Hongai, no matter how close and trusting she was, the regent would not have any jealousy. Moreover, Princess Feng's actions to protect Chu Hongai in the palace today, and Chu Hongai's previous personal escort of the eldest princess to Dazhu to pick up Nan 11 and her party, determined that she would have a weight that could not be ignored in front of the empress in the future. Thinking of this, Princess Jing couldn't help but sighed softly. Perhaps she really didn't have the overall view of Prince Jing, and she was too focused on her own likes and dislikes, so she ignored many issues that should not be ignored. Fortunately, her husband's bloody words woke her up, and now the storm has finally passed and everyone is happy. Everything is in time. At noon, the Chu family prepared a sumptuous meal. The Jingwan couple were guests of honor, and the Chu couple accompanied them. During the meal, both sides talked happily and had a good time. Xian Yuanqi and Chu Hongai enjoyed their world of two before marriage, ignoring the custom of not meeting before marriage. Xian Yuanqi was so happy that he almost picked up Chu Hongai and spun around. Wife, he held her in his arms affectionately. Although I am very touched by your compromise for me, you don't have to wrong yourself, and there is no need to force yourself to do things you don't like, understand? Chu Hongai said that she was willing to learn. Just this one sentence made Xian Yuanqi deeply feel her care. Because she cared, she was willing to try to change herself, and even ignored the unkindness of Jing Wangfei to her. This undoubtedly touched Xian Yuanqi, but also distressed. However, because he cared about her so much, even if he was touched, he didn't want to let her suffer. It's not that I don't like her, Chu Hong I said in a light tone. She is your mother, she has taken the initiative to lower her status, there is no reason for me to put on airs. Xian Yuanqi held her and walked to the brocade couch in front of the window and sat down, kissing her cheek. I hope she is really willing to accept you this time. It's true. Chu Hong I lowered her eyes and looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. I can feel it. Xian Yuanqi raised a happy arc at the corner of his lips. My wife is really popular. Hearing this, Chu Hong I glanced at him silently and said nothing. Compared to the warmth and harmony of the Chu family, the Wei Wang mansion was shrouded in a haze at this time. The Wei Wang couple looked ugly, and their eyebrows were obviously filled with a layer of gloomy anger. The culprit who caused all this was leaning against the door frame idly, watching the imperial physician taking the pulse of concubine Xiao in the inner room. His delicate and noble face showed a casual and comfortable look, and his voice was lazy. Brother Aiken, pack your things and follow me to Xia's house to stay temporarily. Pack 2 sets of clothes and shoes you usually wear, and take a few important books. You don't need to pack too much. If you need anything else, you can buy it later. What is Mr. Xia going to do? King Wei looked at him, his face full of cold anger. Even if your father is the prime minister, it is not your turn to be presumptuous in this king's house. Didn't I just tell the king of Wei? My nephew received the order from the regent and Princess Feng to take Brother Aiken with him for 2 days to train him and examine his knowledge to see if he is qualified to be a tutor to the regent. Xiejin raised his eyebrows, and his charming phoenix eyes showed a bit of coldness, and even the smile on the corners of his lips was a bit unruly. As for the imperial physician, it's because Brother Aiken said that Aunt Jiao was not in good health and he had to stay at home to take care of her, so Princess Feng asked the imperial physician to come and see Aunt Jiao. What do you think is wrong with it? What's wrong? There are so many things wrong. Princess Wei frowned. Princess Feng is going to interfere in the affairs of my Prince Wei's mansion. What does princess mean? Xiejin seemed puzzled. Thunderbolts and raindrops are all grace from the emperor, and Princess Feng hasn't sent down thunderbolts yet. She just sent the imperial physician to check on Aunt Jiao's health. This is considered a favor. Princess Wei, if you think it's inappropriate, I will report it truthfully later, but since I have received the order today, I have to do the job of the regent and Princess Feng. I hope the prince and princess will cooperate and don't make it difficult for me. Xian Yuanyan came with an angry expression after hearing the sound, and looked at Xian Yuanchen who was standing in the room as if his eyes were quenched with poison. Does the second brother want to hug the regent's thigh and leave the Wei palace? Xian Yuanchen lowered his eyebrows and said calmly, I don't. Tisk Xiejin shook his head casually. Prince Wei's mansion is indeed the residence of the former emperor's grandson. Everyone is so arrogant that it makes it difficult for me to handle my errand. After saying this, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers. There was a slight sound, and 2 cold-faced men in black appeared out of thin air like ghosts, kneeling respectfully in the courtyard. From now on, you 2 will take turns guarding Aunt Jiao's yard. Xiejin's voice was lazy, but there was a chill that could not be ignored. There are maids arranged by me in Aunt Jiao's house. They are responsible for 3 meals a day and Jiao's house auntie's soup. No one else is allowed to step in here, and anyone who breaks in will be shot. Yes. Remember to test your daily meals for poison, Xiejin said calmly. If anything happens to Aunt Jiao here, all the cooks in Prince Wei's palace will be killed before you 2 die to apologize. Yes. The author has something to say. Xiejin is a noble, lazy, and seemingly harmless lion, but is actually very ferocious. Although the king of Wei is a first-class prince, the 9th master of the Xia family is a willful person who does not follow the rules. Anyone who breaks these rules does not exist in his eyes, so Rong Yu leaves the matter to him. Good night. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbs feed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, Target. Type, mix. The regent is a yandere who needs to be pampered. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 350. The expressions of Prince Wei and his wife became frighteningly gloomy for a moment. Xiejin, are you going to rebel? Xian Yuanyan asked coldly, with a cold poisonous needle hidden in his voice. The palace of Wei will not allow you to be presumptuous. The corners of Xiejin's lips curled up, and his charming red phoenix eyes raised slightly. Is Prince Yan going to challenge Princess Feng? The three words Princess Feng were like a needle piercing into his heart, making Xian Yuanyan's eyes suddenly become cold and sharp. He stared at Xiejin's peach-like handsome face for a moment and said coldly, even if she is Princess Feng, she has no right to act recklessly in my palace, Prince Wei. The curve of Xiejin's lips deepened. If Prince Yan is dissatisfied, you can go to the palace to protest to Princess Feng. It's useless to tell me. I can't be Princess Feng's master. As soon as he finished speaking, he saw the imperial doctor coming out of the room and whispering in his ear, the concubine has been poisoned by a chronic poison. It is not fatal, but it can make people physically weak and unable to take care of themselves. After Xiejin heard this, he was not surprised at all. He just said calmly, how long? More than 10 years. More than 10 years? Xiejin glanced at Xian Yuanchen, who had a gentle expression. The 17-year-old boy stood there quietly. His handsome face was blank. He had no special expression after hearing the words of the imperial doctor. He seemed to have already known this. Result. Xiejin frowned and understood as soon as he thought about it. So what if you know? Xian Yuanyan was once the grandson of the Emperor Jingui. He had a distinguished status and was the only legitimate son of the Prince of Wei. Whether in this palace or in the entire imperial capital, he was an existence that could definitely control the life and death of their mother and son. As for the little concubine in the Wei palace, his mother's life was completely in the hands of Xian Yuanyan and Wei princess. Even if he knew that his mother was poisoned, there was nothing he could do. Princess Wei and her son were willing to give her the decoction to survive, so he could only watch his mother quietly and obediently rely on the decoction to survive every day. If there was the slightest resistance, mother and son might be separated in the next moment. Xiejin clicked his tongue and suddenly felt like the Guanyin, who was sent to rescue the poor child from the sea of suffering. Why are you still standing there? He glanced at the motionless young man casually and said in a calm voice, pack your things and follow me. The air in Prince Wei's mansion is really not fresh. Master Zhu doesn't like to stay here. Xian Yuanchen raised his eyes and glanced at him, then turned to look at the inner room. After a moment of silence, he nodded slowly, turned around and walked into the inner room to say a few words to his mother. He knew that the right decision was to listen to Xiejin at this time. The other party was following the orders of the regent and Princess Feng, and had already arranged his mother's affairs properly, which relieved his worries. Although he is still a little worried, Xian Yuanchen knows better than anyone else that even if he doesn't listen to Xiejin today, Princess Wei and Xian Yuanyan and their son will definitely not make it easy for him. Maybe they will just stop his mother's medicine in a fit of anger. Not possible. This 17-year-old boy has long experienced the sufferings of the world, and has long understood that he has no control over his fate. He is also aware of his humble identity. He has learned to compromise and tolerate, and has become accustomed to bowing to power. In order to allow himself and his mother to live a better life, he has to be a little more stable. Even if his pride is crushed into dust, he can do it. But even though he was as submissive as possible, he still couldn't stop the violence and torture imposed on himself. To him, Prince Wei's mansion was purgatory, a cage from which he could not escape for more than 10 years. He thought that he would be trapped here for the rest of his life, until his mother couldn't bear it anymore, until he was forced to a desperate situation. Maybe they could both be freed. Unexpectedly, looking at his frail and pale mother leaning against the bed, A light and gentle smile appeared on the corner of Xian Yuanchen's lips. Mom, the regent asked me to serve beside him, so I don't have to be trapped here in the future. Concubine Jiao is a beautiful woman. Even though she had been tortured by illness over the years, her facial features still showed a bit of the elegance of her youth. When she heard Chen's words, she said softly, "Don't come back if you can leave. This is not a good place. Mom is still here, how can I not come back?" Xian Yuanchen held her hand and looked at her pale and thin palm with lowered eyebrows. "My son has studied hard these years and finally put it to use. I will work hard in the future, work hard to win the trust and importance of Her Royal Highness Princess Feng and the regent as soon as possible. If you are lucky, you may be able to get an official position and then you can have your own mansion. It doesn't matter if it is smaller, at least there is a chance. Take your mother out and live there." Concubine Jiao looked at his gentle and handsome face, thinking that he was only 17 years old, but he had already suffered all the hardships that others would never endure in his life. Her heart couldn't help but feel sore and dull. She wanted to say something but felt that many words had been lost. No need to say more. After all these years, mother and son finally have some hope. They should be happy. The maid arranged by Mr. Xie will be here to take care of my mother these 2 days, as well as the experts who protect my mother. My mother will eat well and take her medicine, Xian Yuanchen whispered, "Leave everything else to me." Concubine Jiao smiled weakly and nodded, "Yes." Xian Yuanchen did not dare to keep Xiejin waiting for a long time, so he gave some careful instructions, quickly went to pack some clothes and some books that he usually read, turned around and walked out, and said to the 2 new maids in the room, "Thank you very much. I'm taking care of my mother here. I'm short of money now. When I have money in the future." Before he finished speaking, the 2 maids burst into laughter. Xian Yuanchen fell silent. The 2 maids were both 16 or 17 years old. They probably realized that Xian Yuanchen had misunderstood their smile, so they hurriedly said, "The money my father gave us is enough for us, Master Chen, don't worry." Xian Yuanchen nodded, "Thank you. Brother Ah Chen, you are very polite." Xiejin raised his lips and smiled, "Master Zhu likes it." Xian Yuanchen glanced at him and walked out without saying a word, carrying the baggage. The 9th master of the Xie family had a volatile temper, deep thoughts, and elusiveness. He did not dare to compete with him on his verbal skills. Xian Yuanyan stared at him with cold eyes. "Are you going to betray your family?" Xian Yuanchen walked outside the door and bowed slightly to Prince Wei and his wife. "This is the order of the Prince Regent and Princess Feng. I dare not disobey it." King Wei said coldly, "If you dare to step out of this mansion today, you will no longer be my son. I will tell the world to expel you from my family and remove your name from the clan. You'd better think of something for me clear." "Tisk, even intimidation has been used." Xiejin shook his head, walked slowly behind Xian Yuanchen, put his hand on his shoulder. "Brother Akin, don't be afraid, he won't dare if I am here."